eyes wide open. We are heading deep into the Appalachian Mountains, one of the most active and haunted regions in the United States. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's take a look.
As a West Virginian scientist, I thought it was only appropriate that I share with you my favorite Appalachian science fun fact of all time. It's also a favorite by Hank Green. So the Appalachian Mountains are so old. They're the oldest mountain range on the planet. They're so old that they formed when Pangea was a thing. So when all of the continents were squished together, the Appalachian Mountains were there. And so then when they separated, it means that the Scottish Highlands and the Appalachian Mountains are actually from the same mountain range. And they are older than the trees. Because every good West Virginian knows the lyrics from Country Roads, life is old there, older than the trees. It's because in Appalachia and West Virginia, the mountains existed before trees.
When you have land that's really old and has a lot of energy in it, then you have a lot of different types of people that have lived on that land. There's a lot of heavy energy around. So when you blend all that together, you get creepy.
Here are 13 Appalachian creatures that you may or may not heard of. First up, we have one that probably most of you know. That is the Mothman. Described as a tall, winged creature with glowing red eyes, he was first discovered in the 1960s in a place called Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Many locals thought that his appearance predicted the collapse of the Silver Bridge. So that's given him the reputation that if you do see him, something bad is going to happen. Next, we have the Flatwoods Monster, who I believe is a girl. This extremely tall figure with a spade-shaped head gives off the odor of sulfur. It was first spotted in 1952 by a group of locals, and they spotted the Flatwoods Monster after they saw a red light in the sky, which kind of gives the vibes that it might be an alien. This is the Wampus cat, and it is a cat-like creature, typically known to stalk the southeastern parts of the Appalachian Mountains. They say it was a spirit of a woman who was caught spying on a men's hunting meeting. She then was set to roam forever as a half cat, half woman. The Bell Witch is a well-known story. They even created a movie out of it. This story was set in Tennessee. You can even visit the Bell Witch Cave. And it was set in the 1800s. This creature, woman, tormented the Bell family for quite a long time. They say she caused poltergeist activity, strange noises, even physical attacks. Now this one to me looks terrifying, and this is the Snallygaster. Half bird, half reptile with tentacles, it is said to roam the Appalachian region, particularly in Maryland. It's said to swoop down from the sky to snatch livestock and even your children. The Snallygaster even has roots in German folklore brought over by the settlers in the 18th century. This right here is the Boohag. The Boohag is a creature from both Appalachian and Gullah folklore. Described as a skinless, vampire-esque type creature, it is said to sit on people's chests while they are sleeping. And this allows them to drain energy. It says that the Boohag was able to steal somebody else's skin to blend in during the day. It said that the Boohag represents both Appalachian and as well as African tradition. This is the Spectre Moose, and it is a ghostly white moose that roams the Appalachian Mountains. This one's particularly seen up in the region in Maine. Yes, the Appalachian region does go all the way up to Maine. Its antlers are said to span over 10 feet, and it is a sign of bad luck, an omen of something bad happening if you see one. Some think it's some kind of otherworldly spirit protecting the woods, and then others believe that it's just a cursed animal. This right here is the hide behind, typically seen in the Appalachian dense forests of Pennsylvania. As its name suggests, it is able to stay just out of the sight of humans. So how did one see one? I have no idea. They say that this creature is known to be responsible for hunters or loggers going missing. This is the sheep squatch, also known as a white thing, although doesn't look very white in this photo. Typically seen in West Virginia, it's a large creature with woolly fur, horns, and it's been sighted near forests and rivers. They say that this creature leaves behind some very weird footprints, and it has a terrifying roar. This right here is the Raven Mocker, a spirit from Cherokee folklore. This creature is known as the most feared of the Cherokee witches. It's said to appear as an older person when it's hunting for victims, and it preys on the weak and ill. It supposedly shifts into a raven, makes a terrifying cry, and can only be defeated by a medicine man. But as always, as I've talked about other cultures, please seek out more information from an actual person from the Cherokee tribe. This cute little guy is known as the tailipo. It's a small dark creature with a long tail found in lots of Appalachian folk stories. To the stories, a hunter who was desperate for some nourishment cuts off the tailipo's tail to eat it. It's then haunted by this creature wants its tail back. The creature then whispers, "Tailipo, Tailipo, give me back my tailipo," because it wants its freaking tail back. And this Appalachian tale is supposed to reflect respecting nature and, greed. The silver giant is a lesser-known tale of an Appalachian creature, described as a massive human-like creature with silver skin. Personally, I think they probably just saw an alien. They say that the creature will show up and be completely silent and then vanish. And they say that those who have encountered this creature, that it is basically just trying to protect the mountains. Last but not least, we have the Witch of the Woods of Appalachia. The spectral figure is known to be in the dense forests of Appalachia. They say that she's the ghost of a woman who was wronged by her community. She now haunts the woods and tries to lure unsuspecting people off of their path. Often shared as a cautionary tale, the tale of the Witch of the Wood embodies revenge and respecting nature. So I know there's tons more Appalachian cryptids and creatures.
In the mountains of Appalachia, people whisper about something far more terrifying than bears or wolves, but pale beasts with glowing eyes, shrieking in the night. They call them the white things. They also go by white dogs, devil dogs, or even sheep squatch, and are described as ghostly wolf-like creatures that roam the hills of West Virginia to Kentucky. Witnesses say they're covered in long, shaggy white fur, with glowing eyes and sometimes even a set of horns or a skeletal, decayed face. But the most terrifying thing about them is their screams. It's said to sound like a woman in agony or a child crying. Stories of these creatures date back centuries. Early settlers in Appalachia warned each other of spectral white beasts that prowled the forests at night. Some believed they were harbingers of death, appearing before tragedy struck. Others connected them to Civil War battlefields, where the blood-soaked earth gave rise to restless spirits in animal form. In Cherokee tradition, there are tales of spirit dogs that guarded sacred places. Eyewitness accounts of white things continued into modern times. Hikers still claim to hear unnatural screams echoing through the valleys, with no trace of an animal to be found. And throughout the 1900s, in Appalachian coal towns, miners swore they saw glowing red-eyed creatures pacing just beyond the light of their lanterns. Some say they're just albino bears or coyotes mistaken for monsters. Others believe they're a kind of cryptid unique to Appalachia, but some insist they're not animals at all, but spirits, phantoms of the mountain that exist only to terrify anyone who dares to wander too far.
I grew up in Appalachia, and this is one of the scariest things that ever happened to me while I was hunting. So the phenomenon is called a ghost light. It goes by other names, and I'm not talking about like fey lights or fairy lights. I'm talking about ghost lights where it literally looks like someone is carrying a lantern or a flashlight. It is a very distinctive beam of light or ball of light, depending on how you witness it. And I'm literally getting chills talking about this right now because it's not something I really enjoy doing a whole lot because, talking about it can invite it back in to happen again. So anyhow, when I was in my early 20s, I was out on my family's property. I grew up on a huge cattle ranch out there in the Appalachian Mountains, and I was out there hunting a spot that I'd hunted a million times as a kid. I hadn't been there in quite a while. It had been some time since I'd been back. And there's this trail where it's a dead end at the end of this trail. It's like a sheer drop-off of bluffs. I mean, just straight cliffs at the end of this trail. My family owns the 400 acres around it almost, the nearly 400 acres around it. And all the neighboring lands are also like my other relatives' land. So if you combine it all, there's nobody that I wouldn't know for God knows how far. Which, if you guys are unfamiliar with like Appalachia traditions, it's pretty common that whole families will go somewhere and buy a whole hillside or a whole mountainside together and literally own everything that you can see. So I go out about 5:30 in the morning. It's still dark there. And I get situated on, the ridge that I'm hunting. A clear beam of light comes through. Clear beam of light. Looked like somebody turned on a flashlight. Now, I was the only one that came in there. I came with my cousin, and my cousin was back behind me on the trail, another 100 yards back behind me. So there's no way anybody could have been in front of me down this trail considering that we're the only ones out there. We're the only ones that have access to this property, and this trail ends in a dead end on this cliff. So I'm just sitting there in the dark, just watching where I see this beam of light at. And I know it's going to be daylight in about 30 minutes. So I'm just watching because the light came on for about a good 5 to 10 seconds, like a good amount of time to just sit there and stare at a flashlight. And it didn't waver. It didn't move. I mean, it was just like shing, shing. And I thought, okay, when my eyes adjust or when it gets daylight, I'm going to see who's over there because they can't get out of here. Their only way out is to walk past me. And I'm just watching, just waiting to see who it is. I thought maybe somebody was trying to signal to me that, hey, I'm out here. Like, don't shoot me. And by the way, after this, hunting trip was over, when I met back up with my cousin, he verified that he also saw the beam of light because, like I said, it's total darkness. So any light is going to draw your eye right away. So he was 100 yards back down the opposite direction on the trail than I was. And he also saw this light. And when I tell you I did not take my eyes off this spot for the next half hour, I did not even hardly blink. Light came and there's nobody there. So I walk over, cause I'm at this point, I'm like, forget the deer hunt. I'm going to walk over to exactly where that light came from and I'm going to look around, okay, to see if I see any disturbances or like maybe a homeless person that snuck way back there in the woods or something. And when I get to where that light came from, it is a straight drop off cliff. Like if I would have walked over there in the dark to investigate the light, there's a good chance I would have fallen off this cliff and died. And that's a very important detail when it comes to this phenomenon, because a lot of people talk about how these lights lure people to get lost in the woods or lure them to like bad fates. And that would have 100% been what my fate would have been if I would have walked over there to where this light was at. I would have just fallen in the darkness. This all ties back into things I've talked about on here before called the missing 411. If you guys haven't looked up that crazy investigation, you need to. It's where you can essentially lay maps over like the cave systems in the United States and the missing people reports, and they match really spot on. This area is covered in caves.
In Tennessee, there is actually a serpent that is known to be so terrifying that just the sight of this thing has killed people. First sighting started in 1822 by a local farmer who was fishing. As he was out on the Tennessee River one day, he looks up and sees this serpent-like creature rise up out of the water. The man was so terrified that within a few days, he ends up passing away solely from fear. Now, another encounter ended up happening in 1827 with another fisherman that was on his canoe. He was going down the Tennessee River when all of a sudden his canoe gets hit by some sort of massive snake-like creature that he described as being kind of blue and yellow.
For whatever reason, they're pretty close to the house this morning. Just out of sight, like usual. I gotta get to the truck to get to work.
In the dead of night, unsettling growls and strange noises surround the house, sending chills through viewers. Many comments pointed out the urgency, with one user saying, "You need floodlights and trail cams now." Others joked about survival tactics. No job is worth fighting demons over. While some speculated it could be mountain lions or bears, others were convinced it was something far more sinister, cryptids, skinwalkers, or even interdimensional beings. With no clear answers, the video leaves us wondering, what's really lurking just beyond the tree line? Social media lit up with theories. One viewer warned, "They know your routine," suggesting these creatures may be tracking the man's movements.
So guys, woke up this morning to go to work, come outside, getting ready to go, and this is in my front yard. About a half mile down the road is the neighboring farm, and this is their cattle dog. There's no head on it. It's missing two of its legs. And you want to tell me this creature might not be dangerous? Or that it's just friendly? I don't think so. Don't think so at all. And it left it right here in front of my porch. Why? Well, I gotta go let the neighbor know. I'm gonna give him a call, tell him his dog's here, and yeah, he's not gonna take the news too well, I'm assuming.
I was in kindergarten, maybe. Maybe I was a bit younger, something like that. And me and my family had just gotten home from the movie theater, and it was night out. And I was waiting for my mom to unlock the front door. And while I was waiting, I kind of lived out in the boonies, okay? Anyways, I turned around to look at the wooded area in front of our door, and I see this man thing, and it was about 7 or 8 feet tall, maybe taller. I don't know. It was super, super tall. And it had these like red glowing eyes. Like, whenever you take a picture of something and its eyes like reflect red or whatever, it was like that. It was like it was producing its own light. I don't know. It was odd. And it was extremely skinny and very, very lanky. Like, it had very, very long limbs. And it was going from, like, tree to tree. It was on the ground, but it was running from tree to tree. So it was like tree, 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 stop, stared at me and my family, tree, tree, tree. And, I didn't say anything, cause I was like, well, that thing's moving at like 80 miles an hour or whatever. Like, if my family go and decide to investigate, I don't think that they're gonna come back. You know what I mean? So, I didn't say anything until I was like a teenager. And then I told my twin brother. And then whenever I was an adult, I started telling more people. And at some point told my family and stuff. And while I would understand y'all being like, you're a kid. Kids have crazy imaginations. I agree with you, obviously. But that house, that area, had something going on. Like, for a fact. At some point, my papa, who lived right next to us, by the way, none of my other family who had lived there had seen it. My grandparents, and whenever we left, my aunt and uncle moved in and stuff, and their kids, and none of them have seen it. So, like, odd. Anyways, my papa was a pastor before he retired, and at some point he had to come and bless the house, because things were getting a little crazy. Anyways, I would also like to mention that most cryptids are like regional. You know what I mean? And I know that some of y'all are probably tempted to be like, oh, that sounds like blah blah blah. It's not. It's not. Because at some point I did look up this cryptid. It has a name like something dog. I don't remember. Or I could be misremembering completely, but I do remember that it had like something dog in its name. So, seeing this thing, I'm interested because this has always really bugged me, honestly. Like, it's been 20 years since I've seen it, and I still think about it all the time. And apparently, it's a real thing, like there's posts on the internet about it, and it took me forever to find them, but.
Just thinking about that one time growing up in the Appalachians of Tennessee, that it was the middle of the night and my mom heard something making the dogs go crazy. She steps outside and she hears something
running through the woods, snapping branches, and it was big, whatever it was. Thought maybe it could have been a bear. That wasn't uncommon. And then she hears something scream. And if you have ever grown up in the Appalachians or are familiar with them, you know that there are things like bobcats and mountain lions. But it wasn't like that. It didn't sound like that. And so it freaked her out enough that she woke my dad up. Now, he came outside and he shot his pew-pew in the air, and whatever it was stopped screaming, and it got quiet again. It's kind of wild that they had lived in those mountains their entire lives and had never heard anything quite like that.
If you ever hike alone in the mountains of Southwest Virginia and you get that feeling like you might be being watched, you just might be. This isn't a made-up story. This actually happened last year to a man named Elijah Reed deep in the woods of Southwest Virginia. Elijah was a lifelong hunter, the kind of man that knew every sound, every shadow, every story that the mountains could hold. He said he'd hear the old folks talk about a Bigfoot-like creature called the wood booger. Now, I know that sounds hilarious, but apparently it's pretty serious around there. Many of the locals say that this creature has said to roam the hollers of the area, but he never believed it. Until one evening last autumn, he was hiking this remote ridge in Wise County with his dog Rufus. The sun was setting, throwing this soft orange light over the trees. Then all of a sudden, Rufus froze, muscles stiff, hackles standing straight up. Elijah also noticed something was off. The forest had gone completely silent and still. No wind, no birds, just heavy, unnatural silence. And that's when he saw it. Between the trees, about 30 yards away, there stood something. This thing was 8 feet tall, covered in dark, matted hair. Its shoulders were so wide it seemed to blot out the last streaks of sunlight. Then its eyes met his, and he described it as feeling like it was almost human in a way. Not afraid or aggressive or angry, just watching. Elijah couldn't move, and Rufus didn't even make a sound. And then just as quietly as it appeared, the thing just stepped back into the tree. And then it vanished. Not even a single twig snapped. Elijah swears this is real, and he is not the only one. There are many people in these mountains that say that they have seen the exact same thing. And those people will warn you. If this thing wants you to see it, then it's already too late.
I've had this story on my mind for a long, long time. I've always been a fan of the supernatural and cryptid scene, but never had any standout experiences myself. This is a story about my first real cryptid experience. It's a long one, but I hope you enjoy. In my late teens, I worked at a camp for a few summers. The camp was massive, with only about 1/5 of it being equipped for hospitality, dining hall, cabins, shower houses, etc., and the rest being the wilderness. The land had 6 lakes on it, all connected by small rivers. What made this camp particularly eerie, however, was the fact that it was actually built around native burial grounds. I won't get into the legends around the burial mounds, but overall, this place checked all the boxes of a B-list horror movie. Now, my job at the camp was sort of a catch-all. I was a program director, lifeguard, cook, gift shop manager, and basically if they needed a role filled, I was the one doing it. It kept me busy, and I had many long days. I would close the gift shop at around 7 each night, and then head upstairs to the kitchen. I could walk back to my cabin if I wanted, but the cook hated the dark, absolutely hated it. So I'd help him with the dishes and cutting fruit for breakfast the next morning, and then walk him to his cabin. I have one rule though, no flashlights. You can't see very well in the woods if your eyes are focused on a small beam of light. So every night in the moonlight, I would walk him to his cabin and then walk the public road to mine. My ulterior motive for taking the public road was, well, I'm a smoker, and we have to be a good role model for the kids. No smoking at camp, but they can't tell me what to do on public property. My cabin was right on the edge of the hospitable portion of the land. Miles of marshlands and forests sat behind my cabin, and fortunately, or unfortunately, I had the cabin all to myself, but the weird thing was that every night I would be smoking and walking the public road, I would hear screaming in the woods. It sounded like a woman being murdered. I brushed it off the first night. There's a public access lake, people get rowdy, and sound carries. It could be a prank, or a fox, or an owl. It's the woods, but it kept happening every night, as soon as I stepped onto the road. I decided to not let it bother me, and I had to be up early every day. No sense in chasing noises around in the dark. I would get to my cabin, spread some tobacco for the land, and sleep soundly every night. Well, the end of summer came around. It was always bittersweet. You eat 3 meals a day with the same people for 3 months. They start to grow on you. One goodbye tradition we kept up over the years was on the final new moon of the camp season, the rangers would take the staff for a spirit walk. He'd share the legends of the land with the new staff and try to shake them up a bit. We would hike through the back of the camp, around the marshes and lakes, and see what kind of spooky things we could stir up. We all met at the only street light on the public road that night, but that year the ranger had his rifle slung over his shoulder. We ran into a cougar the year before, and the 2 wolves lived in the back of the property, so I didn't think much of it. The rules were simple. No flashlights, no jingling keys, no running. If you run, we might not find you. They were half to scare people and half true. The woods were thick and the marshes were dangerous. Everything was going smoothly till we reached a river crossing not too far from the public road. It takes you to a clearing just before the trail reconnects to the road behind my cabin. The moment we crossed the bridge, the woods went dead silent. You could hear yourself breathing. That, my friends, is one of the scariest things that can happen to you in the woods, silence. And then, just like every night before, a blood-curdling scream ripped across the clearing. One of the new staff was about to take off before myself and another grabbed his arms. "That's the screaming I've been hearing," I told my boss. "That's the scream I hear every night." The ranger shushed everyone. The scream came again, louder this time. The ranger whistled in the direction of the noise, and it whistled back. Suddenly, the screaming surrounded us. Behind us, to the right, to the left, the group closed in, shoulder to shoulder, not daring to even breathe. The ranger, ever serious and calm, said barely over a whisper, "We're turning around. Take the bridge back to the trail, and we're going the long way." So, in hurried steps, we made our way back to the streetlights that we met under without muttering a word. Once we were in the light again, I could tell that the ranger was actually shaken up. This is the same man that was charged by a cougar in the dark and brushed it off. "I need a cigarette." "You haven't smoked in like 2 years." "I need a cigarette." I wasn't about to argue with the man holding a rifle, so I obliged. After a few drags, he muttered, "I don't want to scare anyone, but I know only one creature that can mimic human voices like that." "It's a Wendigo," I said, not even thinking. I was in shock. All summer I walked that road, and this thing was out there, screaming, trying to lure me in. That's when he said yes. He thought the same thing. He first thought it was one of the neighboring property owners looking for their dog, calling out for them, so he whistled, and then he explained the gun. All spring he was finding deer strewn around the property. Not unusual, being that it's the woods and all, but there were so many, and they were brutally taken down. He said that these things looked like they had been hit by cars in the middle of the woods. They were absolutely mangled, and more bizarrely, no other animals would touch them. No tracks that said a bear or a wolf or a cougar was there. He was worried with something that was bringing big game down like that, so he brought his rifle. No one said much after that. My boss got sage from her cabin and gave it to everyone who asked for a blessing. We were shaken up. After that, I changed cabins. I didn't own much in general at the time, so I wasn't troubled in the least to get off the public road. I didn't even care that I had to row out into the middle of the lake to have a cigarette. I wasn't stepping foot on that road. And I'm a little sorry to say that I never stepped foot back on that property. Call me superstitious, but I couldn't bring myself to go back into those woods, not even if you paid me.
A terrifying account from the Appalachian Mountains. I've lived in the Appalachian Mountains all my life, and I've experienced a lot of strange things. My family was Irish and settled in West Virginia, but I currently live in the North Carolina part of these wonderful mountains. That being said, I've learned what really lurks in these dark woods, but this was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. It all began with my golden retriever growling like he'd never growled before. He literally never growls, so that alone already had me feeling uncomfortable. This growl was bone-chilling. It was like he was ready to fight for his life or something. I took both him and my other dog out around 11 p.m., and they did not leave my side. Now I noticed that my workshop door was open, so I went over to look closer. The entire time, my golden retriever was glued to my side. He kept trying to get in between my legs, still growling, and all his hair sticking straight up like a feral animal. The second the door was closed, the woods erupted. It sounded like 50 full-grown men had broken into a sprint, tearing through the woods. Trees were shaking, branches were falling, and I'd never been so scared in my entire life. Back in the house before I crapped my pants and got my mag light to figure out what was out there. When the dog and I got back outside, we were surrounded by what sounded like people mumbling all over the place. It was everywhere. I shined the light, and I could not see anything. The sound was coming from all over. It sounded like you got a whole gym full of people to baby mumble. And you could almost make out words. That's why I think it wasn't an animal. I almost immediately felt sick, like I was having a mix between a panic attack and a swing of the flu. Back inside the house, it sounded like people were walking around all night. The windows were creaking, and you could definitely hear the sounds of shoes on gravel. Most importantly, the mumbling never stopped. Every time I got up to check the house, my feet would touch the ground, and everything would go dead quiet. You couldn't hear birds, crickets, frogs, or anything. I didn't get a bit of sleep that night. The air felt thick and evil. That's the only way I can explain it. Imagine a soaking wet quilt being thrown right over you.
I found more bones in the woods. Oh my God. That thing is huge. I found another big one. Hey, no. And another one. These are very, very big. Few more. This is not food, Atlas. And some more. These were right up the ridge where I found the horse skull. What a horse is doing up here, I have no idea.
I think that's what I said at all. A little bit weird doesn't even begin to cover it. This is probably the best way to describe our childhood. It was nonstop. Nonstop. In the middle of the night, you would hear snails, wood. I really think you need to abandon this project. Have people you love in your life. You would leave this. You would leave this behind. I'm telling you, you don't want to pursue this. I don't want to do this. I'm in fear for my life. I don't really give a rat's about yours, but if you do, you need to drop this. I'm telling you, you do not understand what.
Make sure to subscribe, and as always, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.